a young woman looked up at the stars. She saw many old friends, Orion, Sirius, Leo. She had learned well from her father. They both would sit atop the Library of Alexandria on those cool Egyptian nights and ponder questions of Plato and his symposium, all the while naming planets and searching for constellations. On occasion, Hypatia would abscond to this sacred spot to watch the sunrise over the beautiful seascape, watch the bustling port city come to life before her very eyes. These were the moments and vignettes that were magical to her. The sacred mysticism that was the act of living and being alive. Who could deny that such enchantment existed when perched from such great heights? Anonymous, but on display for those who would look and notice. This was her city. She loved every part of it. She was in the cradle of civilization and learning. Her home and her schoolroom was the library of Alexandria, created by Alexander the Great, endowed by the great Ptolemaic pharaohs, the envy of the newly named Byzantine Empire. It was her duty to protect the bastion of knowledge of the ancient world, the Eastern traditions as well as Greek, Roman, and Persian. But under the Archbishop Theophilus, fire ran rampant through her fortress. She watched from outside as the flames devoured her home. Tears flowed down her face as she watched priceless knowledge die a fiery death, all because of two men, the Archbishop and the Emperor. She vowed in the most secret parts of her heart to champion education and learning for the rest of her life and never to involve herself with the church or with politics. Nights were never the same after the fire, but she would still walk by her old sanctum, haunting it with her very presence. There now stood a church. The irony was not lost on her. A church where her home had once been, claimed now by the very entity that had destroyed it.
So, hit me with this story. I can already tell that you were going to get a little hot under that collar. You're getting a little flushed, girl. I see it.
Yes. I didn't know much about Alexandria, Egypt during this time. I can boil down what I know to a handful of things: the Nile, pyramids, Cleopatra, hieroglyphics. Not exactly a refined palate. So like any good student, I went digging.
That's what we do. We dig.
We dig.
With the archaeologists. I do love that you made a pun. Thank you.
Oh, no.
Oh, you didn't even notice it.
Oh, no.
She's doing it, listeners.
I really wanted to know what world I was walking into. And boy, was it colorful. I mean, Technicolor vibrant. I found excellent summations from the Smithsonian Magazine and from Lapham's Quarterly. Quote, founded by Alexander the Great in 331 BC, the city of Alexandria quickly grew into a center of culture and learning for the ancient world. At its heart was the museum, a type of university whose collection of more than 500,000 scrolls was housed in the Library of Alexandria. Alexandria underwent a slow decline beginning in 48 BC when Julius Caesar conquered the city for Rome and accidentally burned down the library. It was then rebuilt.
Truly a huge travesty.
Oh,
Huge.
These people...
all those scrolls.
These people in fire. You know what you're doing.
The ancients in fire, actually.
Anybody with fire.
Yeah.
By 364 AD, when the Roman Empire split and Alexandria became part of the eastern half, the city was beset by fighting among Christians, Jews, and pagans. Further civil wars destroyed much of the library's contents. The last remnants likely disappeared along with the museum in 391, when the Archbishop Theophilus acted on orders from the Roman Emperor to destroy all pagan temples. Yeah. So Theophilus tore down the temple of Serapis, which may have housed the last scrolls, and built a church on the site.
I mean, that only makes sense.
It's only the logical thing.
We just always put a church where anything else used to be. Come on. I am not quite sure where we are as far as religion is concerned. It's clear that Christianity is somewhere in this mix, but it's not really the first thing I associate with Egypt. So can you help me out? Give me a little bit of orientation?
Yeah, I was fuzzy on that and really had no frame of reference. So here's what I found, and buckle up, it's a lot.
Okay.
Until the time of Constantine, Romans practiced religious syncretism, the blending of various belief systems and deities from distant parts of the empire. Each person was free to worship a pantheon of different gods and follow the secret rites of more than one mystery cult.
Oh, that would be a great episode.
Oh.
The mystery cults.
I do love mystery cults.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
It does sound like a lot of fun. Anyway.
Go on.
This spiritual assimilation stressed an underlying sense of unity, and often two or more deities from separate culture merged into a new persona. So the Greco-Roman Egyptian god Serapis was one such god, an amalgamation of Zeus and Osiris. He was the patron of Alexandria, and his temple, the Serapeum, housed the remains of the Library of Alexandria, lecture halls for pagan teachers, shrines to other gods with statues designed by the classical world's finest artists. And as Christianity gained traction, any vestige of idolatry was in danger. Constantine assembled councils of Christian bishops to institutionalize the new faith, restructuring the religion from a variety of loosely knit and often conflicting sects to a dogmatic, intolerant, terrorist machine.
That's a big statement.
Right?
That's a lot.
Thanks, Constantine, I guess.
He had a lot of big ideas, big statements, big blunders. It's all fine.
He did. Although he was lionized as Constantine the Great, many of his contemporaries were strongly opposed to him. And that's putting it mildly, considering this 6th century pagan sympathizer. Zosimus speaks of Constantine's character. Quote, "Now that the whole empire had fallen into the hands of Constantine, he no longer concealed his evil disposition and vicious inclinations, but acted as he pleased without control."
Well, that's telling.
Definitely something for the muses, right?
Oh, I like that, yes.
So, just to follow a little bit of our theme of what crazy sides do we have, Constantine killed his own son, heir to the throne, which is, of course, filicide.
Oh, that kind of sides. I was like, what kind of sides? Potatoes?
Macaroni and cheese. No, filicide.
Some vegetables thrown in there. Nope, we're talking filicide.
Yeah. You read ahead. You read ahead. Don't do that.
Should never read ahead.
So angry with his wife about what, I don't know, maybe she didn't put away his shoes correctly, his sandals, excuse me. He had her boiled to death in her bathtub.
That's just rude. How does one do that?
I don't know, how does she...
Just get up, girl! Okay, it hurts, move!
Did she not test the water?
Somebody held her down?
If someone's holding you down, their hands are in the boiling water too.
Yeah?
Like, why not just drown her? It seems much easier.
Or poison.
Poison.
Maybe we shouldn't be telling people different ways to murder others. Don't kill your wife.
Don't kill your spouse, please and thank you.
That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, please put that in our disclaimer.
Go to the Crime Junkie page.
Yeah, anywhere but here. Anyway, according to Zosimus, none of the pagan priests were willing to purify him. Quote, "They told him there was no kind of lustration that was sufficient to clear him of such enormities."
Ooh.
Unquote.
That's rough.
Yeah.
There's literally nothing we can do for you, you demonic man.
And these are, quote, pagan people. When I hear pagan, I think run through the streets and do sacrifices and paint myself, which is such an anomaly.
That's the modern Christian interpretation of pagan, because they certainly didn't want the pagans to be the better, more kind-hearted, more honorable people.
And boy, are we gonna get into that.
Oh, good. Foreshadowing.
A Christian priest, however, supposedly convinced him that with this new religion, he could be absolved of his sins. Zosimus's timeline is not quite accurate. Constantine had converted prior to the murder of his empress, but the sentiment is telling.
He was like, oh great, I've been wanting to murder her, and now that I'm a Christian and have been guaranteed absolution, I will just go ahead and boil her in a bathtub, like a lobster.
Yes, like a lobster.
He lobstered her. Is that a word?
It is now.
He lobstered her.
But here's also the thing. I'm pretty sure Jesus would have a bad reaction to that. Pretty sure he's not here for this.
This poor man, last week we're handing him non-virginal nuts. This week...
Oh, I know. Giving him the duds.
This week we're like, here, have this demonic douchebag. He's all yours. Oh, God.
I'm gonna have to go to church after this.
Next week is something totally different, we promise.
Totally different. Obviously, Constantine was not beloved by Roman traditionalists who attributed the decline of the Roman Empire to the rise of Christianity. Accustomed to worshiping as they pleased, they were horrified that the same gods who had protected and blessed them for centuries were now cursed as demons, which...
That's very fair.
Yeah.
Religion is so much a part of a person's inner being that to just strip it bare and say no more is very devastating to the human psyche.
It's akin to the Assyrians who would steal these graven images from their conquered and be like, we conquered you.
Or with the Inca mummies.
Yeah.
We'll just take your mummy now. Now we worship him and you worship us.
Right.
Okay, tale as old as time. Continuing on.
The emperor passed several laws constricting paganism while bolstering Christianity. He outlawed magic and private divination, except for his own personal use. He called on augurs to decipher the meaning of lightning strikes on the imperial buildings. This ban would later become a problem for teachers like our Hypatia due to the belief that astronomy and mathematics were magical arts.
Well, you know what they say. The devil's favorite subject is math. He likes to add to your misery, subtract your blessing, multiply the lost, and divide the church. Obviously, math is a dark art.
I don't know that I'd call it magic. I'd definitely call it dark.
But the fact that he gets to keep using magic and no one else does is just plain unfair.
Right, and decipher the meaning of a lightning strike on an imperial building?
Yeah, feels to me like Zeus was pissed off that he'd been replaced.
Somebody was smiting you.
It's Zeus, the lightning. It's honestly very easy to divine there. I don't think he needs to have Professor Trelawney out here to interpret.
The emperor provided tax relief for churches, subsidizing the empire's financial loss by sacking ancient temples and melting their statues to collect precious metals. History just repeats and repeats and repeats.
We can't help ourselves, no.
In 325 AD, he convened the Council of Nicaea.
Big deal. BFD.
Yeah, BFD. The first attempt at establishing doctrinal orthodoxy within Christianity. Christian factions had previously preached and interpreted their own unique gospels, but the council sparked a debate between orthodoxy and heresy, resulting in several texts being banned from the official Bible and ultimately destroyed.
Ooh, I would really like to know what was in there.
Oh, I'm about to tell you.
Oh, excellent.
The teachings of Arius, an early Christian writer who denied the divinity of Jesus Christ, were burned, and anyone found hiding his books was sentenced to death.
That's extreme book burning.
Yeah. Other Christian writings, including the recently discovered, and please, I apologize for my pronunciation, I'm doing my best, Nag Hammadi manuscripts and the Dead Sea Scrolls were hidden away during this period with the hope of preserving them, and kind of worked.
Kind of worked. I've actually been there on an archaeological dig from college.
Oh
yeah,
my
it was
god,
super
I'm
cool.
so jealous.
I didn't get to touch them or anything. I didn't touch the mummy, unlike you.
I'm so jealous.
But it worked.
Yeah.
Thousands of years later, here it is.
Pagan writings would likewise be viewed as heretical and suppressed. The emperor particularly disliked the philosopher Porphyry, an enemy of piety, he's quoted as saying.
That's a great moniker, an enemy of piety. I mean, it's not one that I want.
And coming from the guy who boiled his wife alive.
And committed filicide.
Yeah.
What is killing your wife? What side is that?
I don't know, I've got to look it up.
Oh, uxoricide.
Uxoricide.
So we have filicide and uxoricide. And that is your vocab word of the day.
So this guy, Porphyry, was a student of Plotinus and a prolific writer. His entire library of work was destroyed and exists only in fragments today.
His entire life's work.
There you go.
In fragments. That's really sad.
It is. In contrast to the syncretism that the Romans were practicing, Constantine championed the idea of monotheism and a jealous god, which is a term called Elkanah, who reigned supreme over all the others. The implication was there needed to be one ruler over all, a veiled reference to his reuniting the empire under one throne. Subtle.
He was just making himself God in his own little microcosm?
In his own little way.
Okay, that's not conceited. That's not arrogant.
Not at all. Certainly humble and pious.
I think piety went out the window when he boiled his wife alive.
No, I just keep coming to that.
Actually, maybe it's when he killed his son. It's hard to choose which murder was worse.
Constantine himself authored the Nicene Creed, probably the best-known utterance of a Roman emperor. We believe in one God, the Father, the Almighty, maker of heaven and earth. The creed established the precise manner in which God was to be understood, setting into motion the persecution of Christians who interpreted Scripture differently, in addition to all the pagans.
It's not like they don't have enough issues going on with the fact that Christianity at this point is still a fledgling religion.
But now,
If you're not the right kind, you're out. Be more accepting. That's how you get your numbers up. Don't be such a VIP club.
Yeah, but don't you want to be a VIP?
According to Anna Delvey, VIP is always best.
VIP.
VIP.
Ask for a helicopter. So Constantine's nephew, Julian, quote, regarded his uncle not as the great, but as a criminal revolutionary who destroyed traditional religious values in order to salve a loaded conscience, a tyrant with the mind of a banker, unquote.
That might be the best quote we've had on this podcast yet. And I struggle with that because I know we've had many great ones and there will be many to come, but that's awesome.
Yeah.
So that was the episode? Yes? No? Wait, who are we talking about today? What happened to Hypatia?
Well, I really wanted to set the scene so you knew what was going on.
I'm kind of over this whole filicide, uxoricide nonsense. Can we get to the lady of the hour, please?
Yes. We will start with her contested birth date. Hypatia was born around 350 to 370 AD, which is honestly not a terrible range considering how long ago this was, and she's a woman.
Don't we hate that we can just say, oh, it was because she was a woman. Nobody cared about her birth.
I do actually hate this, but she was born to a preeminent mathematician and philosopher at the time named Theon of Alexandria. He was a man of the Muson, according to the Suda.
Well, that sounds lovely. What does it mean? What's the Suda?
The Suda is a 10th century Byzantine encyclopedia of sorts. Well, encyclopedia meets like Debrett's peerage, gossip rag of the Mediterranean world.
And therefore, a man of the Musion
is a little bit hairy.
It means he's hairy?
He could have been hairy, I don't know. It's man of the museum, essentially.
Oh, okay. Man of the museum. Musion. Okay. Continue.
And the contested part of it is whether or not he was associated with the Serapeum at Alexandria, which housed the remainder of the Library of Alexandria,
and therefore had pagan connections.
Right. Or the Hellenistic Museum at Alexandria, which was a little more accepted at the time.
Because it was Christian, or just because it was more...
Well, it was more Hellenistic.
Oh, helpful.
Yeah, I know. It wasn't Zeus meets Osiris. It was just Greek.
Okay, so we weren't blending religions.
Right. It was driving in its own lane.
Got it. Okay.
The clearest assertion is from the Smithsonian article found in the show notes, and it says the last known member of the museum, which is the Serapeum, was a mathematician and astronomer, Theon, Hypatia's father. That's what the Smithsonian says, but there are scholars out there who are like, we don't really know.
Well, that's fun. We just don't know.
Could be that he was independent of both of those schools, but either way, his school that he set up after the destruction of these temples was highly prestigious and doctrinally conservative.
Way to go, Theon.
Yeah. Hypatia established herself as a philosopher in what is now known as the Neoplatonic school, a belief system in which everything emanates from the One.
The One?
And while that sounds pretty convoluted to me...
very New Agey.
It does, but it also feels pretty monotheistic, which is...
Very Christian.
What everyone's trying to get in on right now. But apparently it was...
Yep.
The One and not God, so it was...
She chose the wrong one.
Yeah, the wrong one.
Okay.
The big takeaway here is that it was considered pagan teaching, along with math and astronomy.
All those magical dark arts of math and astronomy.
It's just wild to me that any secular teaching was pagan just because it was not liturgical, but I digress.
It was the liturgical way or the highway.
Exactly.
But wait, I have a question. Hypatia... Did she know the danger she was putting herself in by being a philosopher of the One versus toeing the line for Christianity?
I have to believe that she did know that her beliefs were going to get her in trouble.
She wasn't being quiet about them. They have a school. Obviously, they didn't have a website like, join us today. But it had to have been public knowledge that this was happening and that this was an option.
Right. And her school was very, very well attended.
Erica, the rabbit holes in this episode are starting to add up.
I promise it all matters in the end. Don't you trust me, Caroline?
No. No, not about rabbit holes. I would trust you for your fashion advice, for your historical knowledge, but the promise that you're going to stay on topic, hell no.
The listeners trust me.
No, they don't.
Anyway, back to our Hypatia. She far surpassed her father in her skills in mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy. So much so that she took over his position as head of school.
Oh, that's awkward. I'm sorry, Dad, but the trustees have decided that you must retire for me to replace you.
He probably was proud, right?
Sure, until he didn't have a job anymore.
Well, I'm sure he got some kind of severance package, right? That was a thing.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, maybe. He did have to die at some point, right?
Just killing him off left, right, and
Wanted
center.
to retire.
He took a cruise around the world. Moving on.
From the primary sources, academics did not seem to raise much of an eyebrow about it. They were pretty chill about a woman being in charge of education in this male-dominated field.
Everything I've heard about Alexandria so far makes me want to have visited there then. It seems so progressive in so many ways. You know, prior to the whole burn everything down if it's not liturgical.
Exactly. This is from one of our primary sources, the philosopher Damascus. Quote, donning the robe of a scholar, the lady made appearances around the center of the city, expounding in public to those who wished to listen on Plato or Aristotle, unquote.
The robe of a scholar.
It doesn't seem shocking at all to him to say this.
I love that.
Let's hear some bullet point achievements before we get more into the nitty-gritty and appreciate how fantastic and extraordinary this woman was. Caroline, would you start us off?
Number 1, she worked on the Almagest with her father, who wrote, quote, the edition having been prepared by the philosopher, my daughter, Hypatia. And I do see the pride in his voice, so there you have it.
The Amalgast, for those who are wondering, is a 2nd century Greek language mathematical and astronomical treatise on the apparent motions of the stars and planetary paths written by Claudius Ptolemy, one of the most influential scientific texts in history. The purpose of their educational pursuits at the time were not innovations, they were conservation. And like in our Ada Lovelace episode, she did not necessarily come up with some of the ideas, she expounded on them with her notes. Not an anthology, but an appendix, if you will.
That makes sense, and that was very helpful. So the second bullet point that I have been instructed to read says, she contributed to early maps of the sky. She has even been credited as the first female astronomer mapping constellations of ancient Egypt. Number 3 is the astrolabe. Oh my lord, we're back to the astrolabe! Stop it.
I know! There's so many little Easter eggs in this episode, I love it. It is not Heloise and Abelard's kid, but it's what his name was allegedly based on. One of her students, Cyanius of Cyrene, wrote that she taught him how to build an astrolabe. And the astrolabe, for those of us who don't know, is a very ancient astronomical computer for solving problems relating to time and the position of the sun and the stars in the sky. A typical astrolabe was made of brass and was about 6 inches in diameter, although much larger and smaller ones were made.
Okay then. Number 4 on my list is the hydrometer, which I'm assuming has something to do with water, but...
Yeah, Hypatia also developed the so-called hydrometer or a hydroscope. It was an instrument used for determining the specific gravity of liquids. Her design was referenced in Galileo's writings in 1612.
That would be 1,300 years later. That's amazing.
Yeah. She's accomplished. What can I say?
She's an accomplished young woman.
And this was just the stuff that I could find with sources that weren't contested.
Ooh.
I would also like to cite that almost none of these were listed together. Most sites don't list her entire accomplishments. They pick and choose what side of her they want to highlight and kind of toss the rest aside.
That's rude, and I can also see why this would make you infuriated. Because why can't we just let a woman shine?
Exactly.
Especially an astronomer, let her star shine.
Oh, that was a far hard reach.
On the spot, made it up, just like that.
Just like that.
Punerific.
Punerific. She is obviously an incredibly smart and talented woman. How have we never heard of her before?
So this is not the time to mention that I'd read a book about her.
No, not the time.
I will say, I did not make this connection until now, but I read a fictional work about ancient Alexandria, which was very good, and she was in it, I will say. But they did not list all of the information about her, and I had no idea she was a real person because she's presented in this fictional light. The problem is that even when she is presented, she's presented as something that couldn't have been real.
Fictional
because
world.
A woman running their own philosophical school of thought and having so many inventions and discoveries and appendices to her name is just unthought of at the time.
Here is where we have to start doing a little bit more of our detective work about her timeline, which of course is frustrating because it's not super well documented.
No, because she's a woman.
Exactly.
Is this soapbox getting too tall for us?
No.
Should we get a shorter one?
No, I'll get a ladder before I get a shorter one.
Excellent.
In keeping with our theme of virgins and weird ways to show emotion, let's look at Hypatia's only known romantic encounter.
Oh, yes, please. I mean, no, we should only admire her for her knowledge and skill and brain. But also, I want the dirt.
The Suda, our encyclopedia peerage gossip rag, cites that Hypatia was caught up in a rather one-sided love affair.
Oh.
This gentleman was so obsessed with her, and it's easy to see why.
That went the other way. I thought she was... But you know what? I should have given her more credit.
You should have.
I agree.
I'm a little disappointed.
I apologize, Hypatia. That was so incredibly short-sighted of me.
Yes. This gentleman was so obsessed with her that she had to take a pretty extreme step here. She rejected this suitor with her menstrual rags, saying they demonstrated that there is, quote, nothing beautiful about carnal desire. And this is an example of a Christian source using Hypatia as a symbol of virtue.
So wow, because no, there is nothing beautiful about menstrual rags. Like,
nope.
I'm not going to say about the desire situation, but the rags are out. She did this because she wanted to be, as you say, virtuous and remain untouched, or he was just repulsive and had really bad breath?
Of course, there's no definitive answer, which, again, I hate, but she lived a life, allegedly, of virginity and celibacy in line with the Neoplatonic idea of the abolition of the family system. But also, if she was married, she'd be busy with a lot of domestic duties and wouldn't be able to teach, wouldn't be able to run her school. So
I was thinking along the lines of when Lady Gaga said that she was going to become celibate so that she could write the best music possible. For some reason, celibacy is supposed to make one more creative or more in tune with their life pursuits.
That's one definition of the music of the Spears.
All right, so what happened after the rags? Did that scare him off?
To my knowledge, that put an end to the whole affair, and he did not come calling again.
Good for her.
She is noted across the chroniclers, pagan and Christian, for her virtue and virginity, as well as for her beauty. Caroline, would you read for us?
The Suda describes her as being, quote, exceedingly beautiful and fair of form, in speech articulate and logical, in her actions prudent and public-spirited, and the rest of the city gave her suitable welcome and accorded her special respect. Even though she was heading up this school that was kind of iffy for the whole oneliness, not godliness situation, they still thought she was awesome because she was virginal and beautiful and public-spirited. I like that.
She's serving the community, which is important.
And she was given respect, which I think for a woman trying to pave her own path is hard to do, no matter how intelligent you are, how beautiful you are.
It's hard won. Folks traveled from around the empire, which was pretty large at that time, to study with her. At one point, her school had over 400 male students, almost all from noble or at least very wealthy families.
So she is a female teacher with 400 male students. Was there not a female among them? Where are the women? Surely she didn't have a gender requirement. That would just be weird.
It would be weird.
It would.
Hypatia was the exception, not the rule. Women were still not allowed to study in such a formal way.
But they could teach?
Yeah, I find it hard to believe that she didn't teach a single woman in some way. But that's just my opinion and secret hope.
I like your secret hope. Maybe she found kindred spirits and taught them off the books. I'm on board with your secret hope, but I'm concerned, Debbie Downer, that something is coming because A, we've built her up way too much for her not to fall, and B, I know you.
Oh, I really don't want to be Debbie Downer again.
Okay, then prove that she lives happily ever after.
The next episode I do is going to be happy, I swear.
She's lying.
I really shouldn't promise things that I cannot deliver on.
Debbie, what happens next?
It's not all doom and gloom yet. We still have 2 men and an organization to introduce.
Okay. Oh, good Lord.
So Orestes was the Patriarch of Alexandria and had been Hypatia's student. He was a Christian, but not a zealot.
Okay.
He wanted to incorporate Christianity, Judaism, and paganism peacefully in the city.
That sounds counterintuitive considering the requirements were the liturgical way or the highway.
Right. Think of him as like governor on the secular side of the law. And this is a pretty good descriptor of him. Quote, he was affluent and erudite, bridging the gap between the ancient world of Greek thought and new order of Christian philosophy, unquote. He was also portrayed by Oscar Isaac in a Spanish drama called Agora about Hypatia, and I think that is all I need to say about that.
I don't know who Oscar Isaac is.
He's my newest man crush.
Is he smoldering?
There is definitely some smolder there.
Ooh, this dude.
Yeah.
All right, then.
He was in Dune and also was in the new Star Wars.
Dark and handsome with hooded eyes that come hither look. I see it.
Oh, and the little bit of gray in the dark hair.
With the waves.
The waves.
So we've described him beautifully, you're welcome. But can we just say that Orestes is someone that we all want to...
He's a dreamboat, right?
Done.
He's a dreamboat. He wants to, create this idyllic society where everyone's friends.
He's making utopia, and he's hot while doing it.
Exactly.
Got it.
And then we have Cyril.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, the name just gives it away. The Archbishop of Alexandria.
I don't think we need to have any more about Cyril. It's clear that he's just a jerk based on his name. Sorry, Cyrils of the world.
And two, he kind of got his position through nepotism because his uncle was the last Archbishop of Alexandria, so there's that too.
There's always that. I can see it now. We're going to have good versus evil, the church versus the government. Sorry, church or evil in this case. And hot versus, I don't know.
Curmudgeon-y?
Yes.
I'm actually sorry about this one because you're right. Hypatia is caught between two swinging dicks, and it's just the worst.
Went there. We're gonna have to change our rating.
I went there.
Oops. All right, so we've got our two men. Now, tell us about this organization.
So that would be the Parabolani, and they were like monk thugs.
Monk thugs.
Yeah,
That's new.
it's new.
That's different.
And that's not me, that's the literature, and I'm gonna let you read what it says.
Oh, good. So they'll crucify me instead. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The archaeological basis for the monks' destruction is widespread, encompassing both the eastern and western portions of the empire. The Theodosian Code, which was dated to 438 AD, remembers, quote, the terror of those who are called Parabolani, and the historiographer Eunapius calls them, quote, men in appearance, but who led the lives of swine, and openly did and allowed countless unspeakable crimes. Great quote. Greek orator Libanius wrote to Emperor Theodosius in 386 to complain about the monks' brutality. Quote, the monks hastened to attack the temple with stick and stones and bars of iron. Utter desolation follows, with the stripping of roofs, demolition of walls, the tearing down of statues, and the overthrow of altars. The pagan priests of the sanctuary must either keep quiet or die. The last leader of Plato's Academy, Damascus, calls them, quote, a crowd of bestial men, truly abominable, those who take account neither of divine vengeance nor of human retribution. Virtually alone in supporting the Parabolani is the Egyptian bishop and church historian John of Nikiu, who fondly labels them, quote, a multitude of believers in God, which seems rather vague considering all the things that they did.
Yeah, John of Nikiu comes back up and you totally see who's cutting his check. It's just, ugh.
So, how did we get from all these characters, and we're gonna add in the monk thugs, and then what happens?
Lampums had the best explanation overall. Orestes disapproved of Cyril's violent extremism and felt that the bishop was encroaching on civil responsibilities better left to the secular authorities like himself. When Cyril expelled the Jewish population from the city, Orestes was infuriated and wrote to the emperor to complain. Cyril returned the favor. Their fraught relationship intensified with neither side willing to compromise. Orestes stopped attending Cyril's masses. Cyril despaired. In a half-hearted attempt at reconciliation, Cyril presented Orestes with a New Testament, the newly minted Orthodox version, and asked him to accept its truth and resolve their differences. Orestes saw this not as a truce, but as a pretense for publicly demonstrating his subservience to the bishop.
So that's where we get into the swinging aspect.
Oh yes. He refused Cyril, and enraged responded by summoning 500 monks from the Nitrian desert to harass the prefect.
Would these be the Parabolanis?
The Parabolani surrounded Orestes as he rode through the city and publicly accused him of paganism. Remember, Orestes is in fact a Christian. Orestes informed them he had been baptized by the Bishop of Constantinople, which of course is like a feather in the cap.
Whoops.
Yeah.
That's a big feather.
It's a big feather.
That's a peacock feather right there.
And one of the monks threw a rock at the prefect, gashing his forehead badly. Yeah, fearful his guards deserted him as he bled.
So really bad guards.
Yeah, really bad guards. You need to work on your hiring here. And a crowd of Alexandrians, probably moderate Christians, rushed to protect him and dispel the monks, capturing the one who injured him. Orestes sentenced the monk to torture. After the monk died of his injuries, Cyril declared him a martyr.
What?
Yeah, the feud escalated. Orestes formed his own political party. He was backed by the Jewish leaders who remained in the city, government officials who were moderate Christians like himself, and the Alexandrian elite, including Hypatia. She supported the Jewish resistance against Cyril and believed in a government based on civil discourse rather than violence.
Unthinkable.
Shocking. She was amicable with city officials who sought her advice and entertained them in her home. She had powerful allies all over the empire and a slew of civic honors. By contrast, Cyril was unwanted and disliked, unquote.
So, I'm getting a governor and an archbishop walk into a bar. Monk thugs join in. And the only person who is speaking sense is the woman not allowed inside the bar.
Yes, completely right. Completely right.
Because everybody else just wants to whip him out and measure.
Mm-hmm.
And Hypatia's like, guys,
civil discourse.
let's just sit down. Civil discourse. We can discuss this like grown-ups.
Grown-ups.
Grown-ups. No, these people are not grown-ups.
People were talking, and when I say talking, I mean gossiping, spilling the tea, and having oh so many hot takes.
I mean, how could you not?
None so hot as John of Nicu.
He's back!
He's back.
Yay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Traces of other rumors that spread among the Christian populace of Alexandria may be found in the writings of 7th century Egyptian Coptic Bishop John of Nicu, who alleges in his chronicle Hypatia had engaged in satanic practices and had intentionally hampered the church's influence over Orestes. And this is what he had to say. Quote, "And in those days there appeared in Alexandria a female philosopher, a pagan named Hypatia, and she was devoted at all times to magic astrolabes and instruments of music, and she beguiled many people through her satanic wiles.
And music.
And the governor of the city honored her exceedingly, for she had beguiled him through her magic. And he ceased attending church as had been his custom, and he not only did this, but he drew many believers to her, and he himself received the unbelievers at his house." Unquote.
Holy crap. I will say, he does make for a good propagandist. I mean, it sounds terrible.
Yeah.
His version of events is not acceptable.
No, his version of events really does sound like she's in the wrong.
It does. It makes her sound like a pagan, satanic, magic person beguiling an innocent Christian and forcing him to give up all of his holy ways.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So,
Right.
Did he get it wrong? Is he lying? Does he have some other reason for making this stuff up?
You can tell who's cutting his checks because he is the outlier in all of the sources, Christian and pagan.
Everybody else is, she's awesome, she's kind, she's nice, she's virginal, don't mess with her, and he's like, she's Satan.
A witch. All but calling her a witch.
Burner!
You say that.
Oh no. Oh, Debbie. Oh, Debbie.
Oh, yeah.
Damn it.
Here is where it gets really crappy for Hypatia. This quote is attributed to Cyaneus of Cyrene or Socrates Scholasticus. There's some debate on the authorship, but these are our two most likely options. Since...
Can I just love the alliteration of both of our options?
Yes.
Cyaneus of Cyrene or Socrates Scholasticus? Wow.
This is what happened to her. Quote, The next morning, when Hypatia appeared in her chariot in front of her residence, suddenly 500 men, all dressed in black and cowled, 500 half-starved monks from the sands of the Egyptian desert, 500 monks, soldiers of the cross, like a black hurricane swooped down the street, boarded her chariot, and pulling her off her seat, dragged her by the hair of her head into a, how shall I say the word, into a church. Some intimate that the monks asked her to kiss the cross to become a Christian and join the nunnery if she wished her life spared. At any rate, these monks, under the leadership of Saint Cyril's right-hand man, Peter the Reader or Peter the Lector, shamefully stripped her naked, and there, close to the altar and the cross, scraped her quivering flesh from her bones with oyster shells. The marble floor of the church was sprinkled with her warm blood. The altar, the cross, too, were bespattered, owing to the violence with which her limbs were torn, while the hands of the monks presented a sight too revolting to describe. The mutilated body upon which these murderers feasted their fanatic hate was then flung into the flames, unquote.
I'm having trouble not having like a visceral reaction. That is, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. This is not at all, I mean, the irony of the setting is not lost. The fact that they took her to a church to strip her naked and then mutilate her until she died of what must have been incredible pain. And then I heard the word Saint Cyril, and I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I don't know that I get a choice in not liking it. I have no words, and that's rare for me. I guess I'm hoping she was already dead by the time her body was put on the flames.
I mean, that would be a small mercy, and there's just no way to know.
Oh, God. So they did this to her simply because she begged these two dick-swinging men to settle their differences through discourse.
Her murder was absolutely a tool for subjugation.
I bet it worked.
Yeah.
Because that would scare the crap out of anyone. If this can happen to a well-connected, a well-respected woman who is a scholar
of the nobility,
then it could definitely happen to boy next door who puts a toe out of line.
Mm-hmm.
This is terrible. I don't like this. I'm pretty sure Jesus wouldn't like this.
Socrates Scholasticus agrees with you.
How could anyone not agree with me?
He unequivocally condemns the actions of the mob. Quote, surely nothing can be farther from the spirit of Christianity than the allowance of massacres, fights, and the transactions of that sort. Unquote. In one fatal swoop, paganism was defeated in Alexandria. Similarly, so was any educational advancement for 800 years. It was a huge blow to the city, so just read what contemporaries said.
Quote, almost alone, virtually the last academic, she stood for intellectual values, for rigorous mathematics, ascetic Neoplatonism, the crucial role of the mind, and the voice of temperance and moderation in civic life. The church was patting themselves on the back for snuffing out this light, this woman, this star.
Yep.
Did someone suffer? Did someone pay for the blood of the oyster shells?
No, not even a slap on the wrist. In fact, Cyril...
What? Not a slap on the wrist?
Nope.
I got somewhere else to slap him.
In fact, Cyril was declared a saint after his death and lived...
I knew it!
And lived a solid 30 more years after this situation.
You know what I hope? I hope that she really was a witch and that she came back and haunted the crap out of him in death.
I agree.
For the next 30 years, saying mean things in his ear and, I don't know, making him fall over in his own home. I don't know what ghosts do.
Yeah, but that's not the spirit of Hypatia, She was too good for that.
I agree.
What's worse is Cyril is counted among the church fathers and is also, quote, doctor of the church. And his reputation within the Christian world has resulted in his titles, Pillar of Faith and Seal of all our fathers.
What? But he's a murderer, and not just a little bit, a lot of a murderer. in a very vicious and cruel and unnecessary way. Didn't somebody realize what he was up to? Didn't somebody see through this facade?
Yes, the Roman Emperor Theodosius II, and I will let you read what he had to say.
The Roman Emperor Theodosius II, however, condemned him for behaving like a proud pharaoh, and the Nestorian bishops at their synod at the Council of Ephesus declared him a heretic, labeling him as, quote, a monster born and educated for the destruction of the church. I don't want to say that there's justice in those words, because clearly they did nothing to affect Cyril. Not in his present life, but even in his future situation.
Mm-hmm.
But at least someone saw through him. At least someone saw him for the snake he is.
Yeah. And that, my friends, is that.
Oh, no, you did not.
A really bitter end to a fascinating scholar.
I'm sorry, that's your ending? Oh, she's scraped alive by oyster shells?
Yeah.
And is then the end of 800 years of learning? Oh my god.
Yeah. I will leave you with a really beautiful quote from her student, Cyaneus of Cyrene. It is
better be damn well beautiful.
It is a testament to how much she meant to her students and the type of relationship she cultivated with them. Quote, even if Hades is a place of complete oblivion, even there I will remember you, dear Hypatia. Unquote.
Aww.
Until next time, I'm Erica.
And I'm Caroline. And we are pithily yours. And would like to dedicate this episode to poor Hypatia, who deserved so much better.
So much better.
So much better.
This episode is brought to you by the Pithy Chronicle, LLC. The Pithy Chronicle is intended for education, entertainment, and non-commercial purposes. Any views or opinions expressed in this podcast are personal and do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations that the owner may or may not be associated with in a professional or personal capacity. While we offer lots of sarcasm, this podcast does not offer any advice or services. Listening to this podcast may induce fits of laughter, unexpected distraction, or uncontrollable rage at the subjects, hopefully not at us. We hope you learned something today. If not, so sorry. Please be advised we are not experts in the following fields: medical, legal, financial, technological, thermonuclear engineering, submarine warfare, neuroscience, or cat husbandry. Thanks for listening to our little disclaimer. Just covering our history-loving asses. Bye!